It's the other thing that we basically got into it about on that Joe Budden podcast, which is basically talking about street shit, talking about crime, etc., with gangster rappers, and the concept of it being vulturish. For me, the only thing that I need to say to defend it is that I think that's what my audience wants to hear. And I do my part to be respectful and to not get anyone in trouble. That's never my intention. I let everybody know that they could have stuff removed if they wanted to. But for me, if somebody's going to put conflict on their Instagram story or in their songs, or it's going to be in the news, or if it's in any way part of the public narrative, I don't feel any kind of shame about asking about it. I want to give my fans what they want to know. And if somebody's got something to say about some rapper they don't get along with in a song, I don't want to hype up and cause more violence, but I also feel comfortable asking them about it.
As a serious interviewer, you are allowed to ask anyone anything that you want. Do you think that 60 Minutes, when they sit down, they're scared to ask a question like, that might lead into something? Or you think Barbara Walters was scared to ask questions? Like,
right.
You could ask whatever you want.
That's what makes you great.
Yeah, that's
having
what,
the will to do it.
The will and the guts to do it. Like, it all seems easy to do this shit until you actually are sitting in front of the person and the cameras are rolling and you have a limited amount of time and you have uncomfortable questions to ask. Because a lot of it is like, I remember Jamel Hill. This is the one thing, we talked about this that we were both on the same page with, about how interviewing is less so of a skill and more of a craft, right? You can get a master's degree or a PhD in interviewing, and it won't be the same as someone who's been interviewing for 10 years.
Right. There's a lot of ways to be great at it, right?
A lot of ways to be great at it. And you could ask anyone anything by figuring out how to ask them. That doesn't mean they're going to answer it.
Right.
But like I brought up with Tony Yayo, like remember there's that viral list of the 50 worst rappers ever. Tony was on that list. Like, I'm not going to sit down with Yayo and like the first thing to say, so tell me about you being number 42 on the whack rapper list. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's all about that lead up.
But I managed to get that question in without offending him.
Right.
And having him respond to the question.
Once you get them to a place where you're talking about so many different things that just seems like another thing on the list. Like, hey, people are talking about this. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying people are talking about it.
Man. I remember me and Annalie Choppa, he goes, something about your voice and your approach like really gets people to open up. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, 15 years, like you kind of learn a certain type of way to do things. But it's not, you can ask anyone anything. And you could be like, I always forget his name, the little
Nardwar.
dude. No. The guy I interviewed with the gold teeth that wouldn't answer shit.
Pee Wee Longway?
Pee Wee Longway, right. Yeah. Like the Pee Wee Longway interview was so legendary because he denied everything.
Yeah.
And he like made jokes about it and said, man, I didn't do none of that street shit. I was a school kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, that made it even better.
That was funny, but if somebody else were to do that again, it would probably just be lame, right? If they tried to do the same joke.
Yeah, because it was done so well by this dude who was like a character.
Right.
He's like, what, 4'10" or something?
But I hear people compliment Pee Wee Longway on handling that interview that way as if other people should do the same thing. I'm like, listen, it's not going to be funny if you do it. Also, Vlad probably won't even put it out if you do it because it's going to be so unfunny.
I mean, you don't have to answer anything.
Right.
Next topic. I've been asked lots of shit that I don't want to answer. Mm-hmm. I'll bring up things before the interview that I don't want to talk about, and the person will respect it. Same thing with like Matt Hoffa didn't want to talk about certain things. 600 Breezy, like, yo, let's not talk about this. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
We won't even mention it.
Right.
Not a big deal. There's no guns to your head. There's no hidden cameras. No one, we don't. There's no gotcha moments. We're not I've never recorded someone's phone call and put it out.
Right.
Ever. I always think that's lame. And anyone who's done that to me, I don't fuck with that person.
I couldn't imagine. That's crazy.
It's lame.
Yeah. Illegal in some cases.
Yeah. Although being a public figure it's usually legal pretty much fucking everywhere, which is annoying. But it's all about I'm going to ask whatever I want to ask, and it's up to that person to answer it. And I tried to be as careful as I can. I'm not going to ask a person about a murder unless they've already done time for that murder.
Right.
In which case, Sammy the Bull could talk about all the murders he wants.
Right.
He got a plea deal. He did his time. He's earned the right with his own life, giving up parts of his life to talk about the murders that he did and then monetize it.
But the sort of specific claim that I get the most recently that I don't think has a lot of legs is that there's something wrong about asking a rapper about his ops, asking a gang member about somebody who is in another gang, because that's a situation that could actually cause violence. Now, my attitude, you know, there's been a lot of stuff I've had to cut out over the years where people use basically like gang slurs. I don't want my platform to really be used to incite violence in that way. There's been people that we've removed from the platform because of the fact that they kind of used it in that way. I think that that's where it does get touchy, because you're talking to artists, you're talking to public figures, but then a lot of times these guys also like, you might be talking about the rap, but there's also this layer of street violence that is maybe not what you're talking about, but you know might get activated as a result of this conversation, right?
Try to be as careful as possible, but most times you're usually not breaking a new piece of information. You see what I'm saying? Like if you're talking about, I don't know, 22 G's beefing with whoever he beefs with,
right?
It's because he's already been beefing with him online. He may expand on it a little bit, but he's already talked about the shit.
And the other thing is that 9 times out of 10, if you say, hey, 22 G's, you posted this on your Instagram story where you said, fuck this gang and fuck this rapper and yada, yada, yada. I've never, and he does, he says insanely aggressive things in his music. I've never seen an interview clip with him where he had 10% of that. You know? Like they leave that shit at home. It's like it's standard now. You say crazy ass shit in the studio, and you throw up crazy ass gang signs saying that you want fuck the other side in videos. But then when you come to do the interview, how many guys have you really had? You've got all kinds of drill rappers sitting there. How many guys have you really heard express extreme hatred, their real feelings about their enemies? They don't really do it like that.
I mean, 600 Breezy pretty much gets pretty unfiltered in what he does.
But even someone like him, it's like he's not threatening them on the podcast.
No.
He's smart enough to know that that's going to get him in hot water.
He's not threatening. I mean, but he's been, you know, when he threatened Tekashi, he went to jail over that shit.
Yeah,
because
so he's learned his lesson. Yeah.
Tekashi's people turned him in. It wasn't because of what he said on our platform. You know, I remember he said, I remember in our last interview, we talked about jail, and he talked about how, you know, but in previous interviews, he talked about how he ran the jail and stuff like that when he was in there. And I asked him about that, and he kind of reiterated what he said. And then he just happened to get locked up afterwards. And then when he got there, the jail dudes were like, oh, I seen the Vlad TV shit. You can go in solitary for a while. And he ended up in fucking solitary. But he didn't blame me for this shit. He's like, I'd been talking about this shit. You know, I mean, the fact they picked your interview out of a series of interviews that I talked about it just happens to be, you know, whatever, a coincidence, or maybe you're the slightly bigger platform.
Or a lot of dudes get out of jail and they feel like they're never going to go back, so they might as well talk about everything.
I think him going back was sort of just like he was surprised it happened.
Yeah.